Hi, my name is Kelvin Newman and welcome to the Brighton SEO podcast, where we share talks from one of the world's most popular search marketing conferences. The event started out as a few people meeting in an upstairs room of a pub and is now attended by over 3,000 people from all over the world. This episode is a recording of one of the speakers at a recent event.
I will go to our next speaker on this session, someone who I've enjoyed hearing speak before. I'm very much looking forward to his session now on site architecture. So if you could have a very big, very warm Brighton SEO welcome to Mr. Dominic Woodman, everybody.
Oh. Right, how do I sound? Lovely. Loud. Thank you very much, Kelvin. So let's get on with it. There we go. This is me and my family on holiday. Obviously, I am on the left, my dad is on the right, and the mountain man in the middle is my brother. And when he's not off saving Narnia, my brother did engineering at Bath University. And at Bath University, if you do engineering there, for the first 2 years, you do the same thing as the architects. The idea being that it stops the engineers from building things that look like this, and it stops the architects from building shit that does this. And I think if you work in our industry, if you work in SEO, if you work in marketing, if you work with sites in general, information architecture is just as important to you as architecture is to an engineer. Unfortunately, I don't have 2 years, we've got 20 minutes, so to start off with, before we can go to anything, we've just kind of got to agree on vaguely what it is for our jobs. What does it mean? So to begin with, I did the thing that anyone does when they're doing a presentation, which is they just Google it. And we go, okay, so a website or internet's information architecture has two main components, an identification, a definition, a site. There's loads of that. Basically, we don't really agree. And none of it is certainly helpful for this sort of presentation. In fact, even my favorite definition, and of course, they're all long and businessy, right? They're filled with words and they're filled with acronyms and jargon. And of course, my favorite definition that was pointed to me, which is deciding how something will be organized, or DHSWBO, is like, that's beautiful, right? Compared to that garbage that we just had, this is so succinct and wonderful. But it's really general, and again, not a particularly useful definition for us. So I still need the definition, so then we'll go, okay, what do SEOs think internal architecture means? And of course, we all know this one. We can say it on 3. Internal architecture means 1, 2, 3, links. Obviously, it means links. Or to be more specific, it means internal links. That's how enthusiastic we are about them, that we go slightly cross-eyed. And I think, by and large, this is a very important part of it. But it's not all of it, and actually I think there are 2 big things here. There's the first one, which is matching up intent to templates and pages. And then there's the second one, which is how do you link and relate those pages so search engines can understand that relationship. Or links. And I think as an industry, the problem is we focus far too much on the second one. And really, it's the first one where we have these huge gains to be made. To give an analogy here, so let's suppose you're starting a company and you have 4 people in your company. And so you go to your, punchline, you go to your engineer and you go, I've got 4 people in my company, I need to get them a place to work. And he's like, perfect. What you need is a house. And that's great, right? To begin with, that's fine. But then you come back and your company is a little bit larger. And let's say you come back when you have 2,000 people. At this point, and you go, okay, you same engineer, I need a building for 2,000 people. He's not going to take your house and put shit on top of it till it fits 2,000 people. He's going to build you a new house, a new building that you can work in. But that's not how we make websites. When we make websites, we just bolt things on. We do the equivalent of taking a house and bolting shit on. We end up with something that looks like this, where we just stuck landing pages on one bit, and then maybe this bit up here is a blog. That's a landing page, that's a landing page. We put a template over there because we thought we needed it. And then we just sort of go, we'll link all this together. And Google will understand it, it'll make sense. Of course it doesn't fucking make sense. Look at it. It's absurd. What a stupid building. And the other thing, if this was constructed by SEOs, if you probably took a look inside this building, you would discover that every one of these things bolted on is a toilet. And actually, we didn't bother to put any kitchens because no one talked to each other. And so by and large, I think, and it's a real shame, this is the thing, because of these 2 points, right, of these two things, if you get them together, if you can do both of them at the same time, your customers will see the right pages at the right points in their journey. And you will get delicious diabetic introducing rewards. Right? You will get some people looking at you like Adam looks at this delicious dessert. And so this presentation isn't about links. Full disclaimer. It's about this. It's about matching up intents to templates and pages. Because that's how you go from a beautiful debonair house into a strong, fantastic building of a website. So, a couple numbers to begin with, just to give you kind of some credentials. I'm wearing my glasses, so I seem smarter and more authoritative on stage. We're going to also give you some examples and some numbers. So, when I'm not working at Distilled and I'm not doing split tests and all that sort of stuff, I run a job site for people who want to teach English abroad. One of the big intents in that space is teaching English online. This isn't like where you teach English in China, you go to another country, you go to China, you learn the language, you bond with people, you learn the culture, and at the same time you teach Chinese people English. This is just you on your computer, talking to someone who doesn't speak English as a first language and teaching them English. And on my website, I had a couple places that I tried to meet this intent with. I had a guide, which was sort of vaguely talked about, and I had some job adverts. But I hadn't really matched up the intent to the template or page that I was trying to put it on. Because actually, it's a pretty commercial intent by and large, right? It's not an exciting experience. You just want to earn some money by and large. Most of the people are doing this. So the first thing I had to do was I had to fit that intent. So I went away and I made this category page where you could just go straight to the jobs. And then at this point, because I don't want to be the guy who's bolting shit onto things, I go and I redirect the job adverts back to the category and I retarget the guide. And it's a little bit nerve-wracking to begin with because frankly the traffic doesn't do all too well. But if you take a look at the user signals, they're through the roof. I've clearly all of a sudden, users are ending up somewhere where they are happier to be. And when you look at it over the course of 5 months, I ended up with about 4 times the traffic that I initially had. It was very, very successful. So that's just a quick example to give you an idea of how this can be successful. How do we keep this tangible? Because presentations about information architecture have a tendency to just sort of float off into intangibleness and everyone struggles to follow along and takes out their laptops. So this terrifying woman is going to be our example. She's not actually incredibly enthusiastic about links. She's incredibly enthusiastic about someone else and something else. Any guesses? When was the last time any of you looked this happy? You can zoom out. Oh, there's someone else in there. I'd be terrified if I was him. In that picture, if you can drag your eyes away from her face, she's buying a car. That's what she's so excited about. I mean, I really had to... The hardest decision in this presentation was which stupid stock photo do I pick for buying a car? Because there are hundreds of them, and they're all wonderful. This is the one I went with. But this is the example that we're going to run through, right? So when we talk about matching up intents to templates and pages, we're going to use the example of buying a car to keep all this grounded and hopefully to keep you all able to follow the train of thought. So when we're thinking about this, and when we're talking about this in general, even when we look at this, this is actually quite a large area. Right? This isn't just like a problem that we can solve put our feet up and solve every single week. This is like a big loads of plot threads coming together, finale, ending, problem. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this. So it's worth briefly running through what exactly does go into this. Because it's too large for one presentation. So, first step, who buys your product? Nice and simple. We're talking about buying cars. So we've got Dave, he's looking to upgrade an old car, and Alan's looking to get a first car. We've got some fairly standard customer profiles. Secondly, what are their steps to buying? Right? How do they end up purchasing things? We should know this about the people in our industry and the people who visit our products. So when we look at this, we go, okay, so they're looking around, they have that general awareness, they build some requirements. Okay, I've got 3 kids, I need to be able to fit 3 people into it. Stuff like that. And we put a list of cars, compare competitors, all the way down to when we're looking for deals, right? We're sitting there and we're, trying to go, how can I just get the best price for the car that I've settled on? And then that brings us to the third step, which is for each of those stages or steps, how do we reach people in it? Because the same channels are not going to be the same ways to reach them. If we take a look at, for example, the first step, It's kind of like offline social, just general brand awareness. In 2012, you can bet a damn more people were thinking about Aston Martin than they are now. Because James Bond had just come out and he was looking suave as fuck standing next to a gorgeous Aston Martin. It was in people's heads, it was in their brains. Like, search is not the right way to get in that initial sort of discovery looking around phase. But building requirements, yeah, that's definitely more a search-focused intent. All the way down to looking for deals, where realistically, if someone already knows what they want and they just want the best deal, PPC, email, retargeting, that's probably how you nail people in that final step. But this is a presentation mostly about search. So we're just going to look at the ones where search is the answer. And for those ones where search is the answer, get keywords. So our example keywords that we've got, I've chosen the building requirements step. And we're going to do it for a VW Golf. Again, obviously this is vastly reduced just for the sake of being able to show you something tangible. So we've just got a bunch of keywords, right, where we've just selected things that we might think might come up in this sort of thing. So we've got VW Golf review, fairly obviously. We've then got some stuff about miles per gallon, horsepower, interior dimensions, and we've got a 2012 model there as well. So, then we get to the final question, which is how do you split those keywords into pages? Because it's not immediately obvious how many pages that should be. Right, there's probably at least 2 pages, right? We've got all the VW Golf stuff, and then we've got the 2012 ones. But is there more than 2 pages? We need a review page, a specs page. That's not particularly clear. And this is the one where I think is probably the most interesting problem. So for these 4 problems, keep doing however you were doing it. Whatever process you have in your business, the way that you already do it, just keep doing that. And for this 5th and final one, we're going to run through how to do it. So how do we turn keywords into pages? There is a Google Sheet that you can get up here. Don't worry, this will all be downloadable. And the Google Sheets will run you through what I'm about to talk through now, just to give you something more tangible. So we start, of course, with our keywords, right? So we've got the keywords from the previous step. And the first thing we're going to go away and do is we're going to do a bunch of data gathering. So we're going to go and scrape the top 10 to 20 SERPs for our keywords. See, I've got some rich snippet information up there. I've got some URLs that rank between 1 and 20. And you can get this from your favorite rank tracking tool. We use Stat at Distilled, but really any of them that give you that data will be fine. So we've got that, and we move on to the next thing. We then want to get the title and meta description for those ones. Again, you could export this from your rank tracker, or you could just crawl them, right? Once you've got them, you just crawl it. Finally, we're going to get domain strength. If you're an API fan, you could get this from any of the APIs that provide this. Or URL Profiler is a great program if you are not comfortable with code, where you can just run it, paste in a list of URLs, and it will give you that data. So we've gathered all of that data for our keywords. Now what we're going to go and do is we're going to go and get all of the existing pages and templates that we think might be relevant. So in this case, our intent is building requirements. That's what we're thinking about. So we're going, okay, so our car review template seems vaguely important, like might be relevant. The specifications one, we've got then a couple other things that might pop up in there. Fantastic. All our data gathering is done. Now we're going to go and do some data analysis. So firstly, we're going to take a punt at grouping all those keywords semantically. So just sort of general grouping, right? I'm reviews together, my specs together. Doing this at scale is actually quite difficult. There are plenty of nice tools, though, that can help you with this sort of thing. My colleague, Evil Jono, has provided a term tagger that lets you do this. When you download the slides in here, or if you go to the slide share, this one here is a link, so don't worry about it, because obviously it's not a link here. You've already missed Stefan's talk, but if you did see it, he talks about it. Using natural language APIs. Again, his slides are linked in here. And you could, of course, just do it by hand. You could just hire a bunch of interns and make them do it. Either way, you end up with something that looks like this, where we go for our keywords. Okay, we'll have a review kind of cluster, we'll have a specs cluster, then we'll have a 2012 cluster and a 2012 specs cluster. So that's what we kind of have at this point. Now we're going to go use all this data, right, that we just spent so time gathering. And slightly before we do that, we're going to match the groups to pages. So we've gathered those pages in the previous bit. Then we're going to take these pages and match them to those groups of keywords. So we can see here, right, that I've got the VW Golf review, and I've matched that to my review template, and then we've got my horsepower that's matched to my specs template. Some of these are existing pages, some of these are new pages that we don't have. So we end up with something that looks like this, right, my review and specs, and then my 2012 review and specs pages. Retarget and create. Then we're going to take that data, and we're going to now rework what we have. So let's take a keyword. VW Golf interior dimensions. And we're going to look at what Google is showing for that keyword. Because if we actually look at these results here, it's not shown like we assigned VW Golf interior dimensions to a specs page. But a specs page isn't what ranks. What ranks are specific pages about dimensions. So actually, what it's showing is different to what we had kind of imagined that it needed. If we take another example, let's take VW Golf reliability. What we have at this point is, again, this time 5 of the 6 are specific pages exactly designed to meet the need of reliability, meet that intent. And only one of them is a general one, and that's the Telegraph. It's a very strong brand. On the other hand, if we look at 2012 VW Golf reliability, now they're all general pages. Now they're all just general reviews for the VW Golf that rank. So we look at what actually ranks for our keywords. And in some cases, it's general specs pages. But in other cases, what we found actually is the dimensions kind of have their own page, and often there's a specific dimensions page. When you're doing this at scale, obviously you won't do this. When you do this in the sheet that I provided you, you don't do this with just like eyeballing it. You will do this by looking at the occurrence of the keywords in your title and your meta and your URL to give you that information and allow you to do this at scale. And you'll bring in all the domain authority across that to sum it all together, which will take you to this sort of decision tree. Where on the vertical axis you have, are you stronger than your competitors in this particular keyword and area, or are you weaker? And on the horizontal axis we have, is what Google is showing for this area, is it primarily specific pages, or is it big general pages? If it's showing specific pages, then kind of however it's going to land out, you probably want to make specific pages. If you're stronger than everyone else, you might as well make specific pages. You're not going to lose anything for it. And if you're weaker than them, you're sure as hell not going to outcompete them by going general, if it's already showing their specific pages. On the other hand, if you're stronger than your competitors and it's gone general, then you can kind of do whatever you want. You can play it safe and you can go general. Or you can dig in and you can go super specific because you probably have enough authority to convince Google that this is something that a specific page should rank for. If you're weaker than everyone else and the SERP is general pages, then we kind of deprioritize and we ask ourselves another question, which is this a genuinely new thing that you found that no one else has covered before? Have you had an idea that's so unique that no one else has ever thought of it? Because if you have, fantastic. We just go ahead and make our specific pages. And if you haven't, at that point you've probably found a very, very long tail keyword that it's not worth having a page for. So this was our original keyword grouping before we looked at what Google showed, before we looked at the context of how strong they were. And what we actually end up with is something more like this, where we have 2 new pages that we've decided we need now. We now have reliability and we have dimensions. And the 2012, we only have 1 page there now because it turns out we didn't need 2. So our final pages that we made looks more like this. 2 review pages that we originally had that we're retargeting, and then 3 new pages that we're making. Then we wait. We sit back, we create those pages, we retarget them, and we just gather data. We let them sit there. And then we do the most important part of it. This is where we rinse and repeat, right? We iterate now. This is not a one-shot win. This is something that takes time. So firstly, we go to Search Console, we pull down all the data. Again, in the associated sheet with this, there are links to ways that you can do this with the API, some API scripts that my colleague Stefan has written and I have butchered and turned into horrible things. You can get those when the link's in the presentation. You can get it really however you fancy. You could just download it from the interface. But get it for your pages and templates that you care about. Then you're going to assign, then you're going to look at basically how well did your keywords assign. Right, at this point, we've given all our keywords in a page and a template. We're going to double check what actually appears there. We're going to look for ping-ponging. We're going to look for how well the assignments worked. There's a link at the bottom here. This is a presentation that John Ershaw gave. I believe it was Brighton 2016, where he talks about ping-ponging suspicious search flux. It's an entire presentation, so just go and watch that yourself to kind of run through it. But it's almost what you would imagine. And then at this point, we're going to find a couple things. We're going to find some new keywords that we don't have that we're going to have to reassign. So we're going to go back and put them in our original set of keywords. Then we're going to have some existing keywords, which are going to be changing pages. Okay, that's worrying. That's the beginning of our problem space, where we've clearly not successfully communicated our intent there. Perhaps we need to regroup them. Perhaps what we discover is we need to consolidate pages we don't need. Perhaps we might have discovered this old blog post that was just existing there and we don't want. Or perhaps what we discover finally is actually links. Fucking finally! God, we're back to links. Maybe we discover at this point that we've nailed the intent, and what's wrong with it is that the linking structure is misshowing our website. And then we wait, and we iterate again. And we just keep going, people, because this is not a 1-month win. Remember, this is a long process. The times that I fucked this up with clients, is where we've done one-off projects and I've basically been arrogant enough to go, yeah, I'll nail this first time. I've never touched your industry. Obviously, I'm just going to rock up and create the perfect matching. And then we do it and the project ends, and then I look back a year later and they haven't moved because it's not a 1 month win, or they didn't do it, one of the two. So, what should you do next week? Turn your intents into pages and templates. And that's these 5 things, right? It's who buys your product. It's find out then what are the steps to buying. Then look at each of those steps, which channel matches to each of those steps. Where search is the answer, get keywords. And then take your keywords and match those to pages. For 4 of those, keep doing them however you have already been doing them. And for the 5th one, I've given you a process you can take away and run, so you can fit this entire set of it. And finally, and most importantly, if you take one thing away from this presentation, go and watch House. It's fucking fantastic. Get your house in order, people. There are 8 seasons. 1 to 5 are pretty great. Yeah, after that, probably don't worry about it. But it's a phenomenal television show, and you'll really enjoy it. So this is me on Twitter. That's resources, stuff like this. And these are the slides where you can, of course, download them. I uploaded them beforehand, so they should all be accessible. 20 minutes exactly. Thank you very much.
This was originally recorded at a Brighton SEO conference. If you want to listen to more episodes or find out about the conference itself, you can do at brightonseo.com.